There's a being chained to a rock right now, somewhere beyond the edges of the world, and every single day, an eagle tears out his liver. Every single night, it grows back. This has been happening for thousands of years, and the worst part? He chose this. He knew exactly what would happen, and he did it anyway. His name is Prometheus, and the reason you're watching this video, the reason you can read these words, the reason humanity ever rose above the animals, is because of what he stole for us. Today, we're going to explore the myth of the Titan who defied the gods. But more importantly, we're going to understand why his story might be the most relevant ancient myth for the world we're living in right now. Let's go back to the beginning, before humans, before the Earth had taken its final shape, back when the cosmos was still young and the gods were still fighting over who would rule it. The first beings weren't gods at all. They were titans, massive primordial forces older than Zeus, older than Olympus, older than the concept of mercy or justice. And among these titans was one named Prometheus, whose name literally means forethought. He could see the future, not perfectly, not with absolute certainty, but enough to understand consequences, enough to know what his actions would cost him. This is crucial. Remember this. Prometheus wasn't acting on impulse or emotion when he made his choice. He saw the future stretching out before him like a road, and he walked down it anyway, eyes wide open. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you to the moment when everything changed. The war between the Titans and the Olympian gods had just ended. Zeus and his siblings had overthrown the old order, imprisoned most of the Titans in the deepest pit of Tartarus, a place so far below the underworld that it would take an anvil 9 days to fall there from the surface of the earth. But Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus had sided with Zeus during the war. They were spared. More than that, they were given a task. The gods had created mortal creatures to populate the earth, but these creatures were empty shells, blank slates waiting to be filled with gifts that would allow them to survive. Zeus commanded the two Titan brothers to distribute abilities among all living things. Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought, immediately began his work. He gave the lion its strength and claws. He gave the eagle its wings and sharp vision. He gave the fish their scales and gills, the deer their speed, the bear its thick fur. He was generous, creative, enthusiastic. But Epimetheus had a problem. He'd given away all the good gifts before he got to humanity. When he finally arrived at these strange, hairless, weak creatures standing upright on 2 legs, he had nothing left to give them. No claws, no fangs, no wings, no armor, no speed. Just soft, vulnerable skin and minds that could barely comprehend their own mortality. Humanity was doomed from the start. Prometheus looked at these pathetic creatures and something stirred in him. Maybe it was pity, maybe it was something deeper, a recognition of potential, a glimpse of what humans could become if they were given the right tools. The myths don't tell us exactly what Prometheus was thinking in that moment, but they tell us what he did next, and what he did next changed everything. He went to Mount Olympus. He snuck into the halls of the gods like a thief in the night, and he stole fire. Not just any fire, but the divine fire that belonged to Zeus himself, the fire of the gods, the fire of creation and transformation and knowledge. He hid it in a hollow fennel stalk, descended to earth, and gave it to humanity. Now, on the surface, this seems like a simple story about how humans got fire, but pause here and think deeper, because fire isn't just fire in this myth. Fire is technology. Fire is knowledge. Fire is the ability to transform the world around you, to take raw nature and shape it according to your will. With fire, humans could cook food and make it safer to eat. They could harden clay into pottery, smelt ore into metal, clear forests, stay warm in winter, see in the darkness, and most importantly, they could create. Fire was the first tool that made all other tools possible. But fire was also something else. It was rebellion. It was the idea that humanity didn't have to accept the limitations the gods had placed on them. It was proof that mortals could aspire to something greater than mere survival. And Zeus understood this immediately. The moment he realized what Prometheus had done, he flew into a rage that shook the foundations of Olympus. Because here's what most people miss about this story. Zeus didn't punish Prometheus just because he stole fire. He punished Prometheus because he had disrupted the natural order. The gods were supposed to be superior to mortals in every way. That was the entire structure of the cosmos, gods above, mortals below, each in their designated place. But Prometheus had given humans a spark of the divine, and that spark meant humans were no longer satisfied with being merely human. They would always be reaching, always climbing, always trying to become more than they were meant to be. Zeus's punishment was calculated, methodical, and absolutely horrifying. He ordered Hephaestus, the god of the forge, to chain Prometheus to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains at the edge of the world. But not just any chains. These were unbreakable bonds forged from the same divine materials used to hold the Titans in Tartarus. Prometheus couldn't move, couldn't escape, couldn't even shift his weight to relieve the agony of his position. And then Zeus sent the eagle. Every day at dawn, this massive bird would descend from the sky and tear into Prometheus's abdomen, ripping out his liver and devouring it while the Titan screamed. The liver, the ancient Greeks believed, was the seat of emotion and desire. Zeus wasn't just torturing Prometheus's body, he was torturing his capacity to feel, to hope, to care. And because Prometheus was immortal, because his Titan physiology regenerated, his liver would grow back every night and the cycle would begin again the next morning. 30,000 years. That's how long some versions of the myth say Prometheus hung on that rock. 30,000 years of daily torture, of watching the sun rise knowing what was coming, of healing just enough to be destroyed again. And here's the thing that should make you stop and think. Prometheus knew this would happen. He had forethought. He saw this future before he stole the fire, and he chose it anyway. What kind of love for humanity could possibly be worth 30,000 years of agony? What did Prometheus see in us that made him willing to endure eternal punishment on our behalf? Because make no mistake, this wasn't just about fire. The myths tell us that Prometheus gave humanity other gifts too. He taught them architecture, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, navigation, and writing. He gave them every science and art that separates civilization from barbarism. He looked at these weak, mortal creatures and decided they were worth saving, worth educating, worth suffering for. But the story gets even more complex because Zeus didn't just punish Prometheus, he punished humanity too. He ordered Hephaestus to create the first woman, Pandora, and he made her beautiful and curious and gave her a sealed jar as a wedding gift when she married Epimetheus, Prometheus's foolish brother. Zeus told her never to open it, and of course, she opened it. From that jar flew every evil that plagues humanity: disease, old age, hard labor, insanity, vice, passion, famine, and all the countless miseries that make human life so difficult. Pandora tried to close the jar, but it was too late. Everything had escaped except for one thing that remained trapped at the bottom: hope. Some scholars say hope was trapped to torture humanity, to keep them reaching for a future that would never come. Others say it was trapped as a mercy, to protect humanity from the one thing that might actually save them. The Greeks themselves argued about this. But think about what this means in the context of Prometheus's gift. Fire gave humanity the power to create, to build, to rise above their limitations. But that same gift guaranteed they would suffer, that their lives would be filled with struggle and pain and effort. Knowledge is a double-edged sword. The more you understand, the more you realize how much you don't know. The more capable you become, the more responsibility you carry. Prometheus didn't just give humanity fire, he gave them the burden of consciousness, the weight of potential, the exhausting requirement to be more than they were meant to be.
And yet, chained to his rock, being tortured day after day, Prometheus never recanted. He never apologized. He never begged Zeus for mercy. In some versions of the myth, Zeus himself came to visit the Titan, offering to end his suffering if Prometheus would simply admit he was wrong, if he would acknowledge that mortals didn't deserve the divine fire. And Prometheus refused. He would rather suffer forever than betray humanity. This is where the myth becomes almost unbearably relevant to our modern world, because we're living in the age that Prometheus created, aren't we? Every technology, every scientific advancement, every time we push the boundaries of what's possible, we're using the fire he gave us. We've split the atom and touched the moon and decoded the human genome and created artificial intelligence. We've become so powerful that we can alter the climate of the entire planet, create life in laboratories, and potentially extend human lifespan indefinitely. But we've also created nuclear weapons that could end all life on Earth. We've polluted the oceans and the air. We've built systems of surveillance and control that the gods themselves would envy. We've engineered diseases in labs and automated warfare and created technologies that are rewiring human consciousness in ways we don't fully understand. The fire Prometheus gave us has grown into an inferno, and we're not sure if we're controlling it or if it's controlling us. Here's the question that the ancient Greeks were asking and that we still need to ask today. Was Prometheus right? Should humanity have been given this power? Or would we have been better off as innocent animals, living simple lives without the burden of knowledge, without the weight of choice, without the capacity to destroy ourselves? The ancient playwrights wrestled with this question. Aeschylus wrote a trilogy about Prometheus, though only the first play survives. In it, Prometheus is portrayed as a tragic hero, a rebel who suffered for his principles. But Aeschylus also shows us the cost of that rebellion. Prometheus may have been right, but his rightness doesn't protect him from consequences. Justice and punishment aren't opposites in Greek tragedy. Sometimes they're the same thing. As Prometheus hangs on his rock, other figures visit him. Hermes, Zeus's messenger, comes with offers and threats. Oceanus, another titan, begs Prometheus to submit, to end his suffering by accepting Zeus's authority. But the most haunting visitor is Io, a mortal woman whom Zeus had seduced and then transformed into a cow to hide her from Hera's jealous rage. She wanders the earth in agony, driven mad by a gadfly that never lets her rest. And when she meets Prometheus, she asks him why the gods are so cruel. Prometheus tells her something profound. He says that Zeus's power isn't absolute, that there's a secret that could overthrow the king of the gods, and that only Prometheus knows this secret. This is his leverage, his one bargaining chip. He could tell Zeus about the danger and earn his freedom, but that would mean submitting, admitting that the gods have the right to rule as they please. So Prometheus keeps his secret and his suffering. Because some principles are worth more than freedom. Some truths are worth more than comfort. But what is that secret? The prophecy says that Zeus will father a son who will overthrow him, just as Zeus overthrew his own father Cronus, just as Cronus overthrew his father Uranus. The cycle of divine violence continues, and Zeus lives in fear of his own children. The only way to prevent this fate is to avoid the wrong child, but Zeus doesn't know which child will be his downfall. Only Prometheus knows. The mortal woman Thetis will bear a son greater than his father. If Zeus lies with her, he's doomed. This knowledge is Prometheus's shield and his prison, because he can't use it without betraying his own principles.
Eventually, after those 30,000 years, Hercules passes by during his labors. He sees Prometheus chained to the rock, hears his story, and in an act of heroic compassion, shoots the eagle with an arrow. But even this isn't simple liberation. Zeus had decreed that Prometheus could only be freed if an immortal willingly gave up their immortality to take his place. It's Chiron, the wise centaur who had been poisoned by one of Hercules' arrows, who makes this sacrifice. Chiron was suffering from an incurable wound, and he chose to exchange his eternal life for Prometheus' freedom, descending into death so the Titan could finally be released. Think about that for a moment. Prometheus' freedom required sacrifice. Someone else had to pay the price. This isn't the triumphant liberation of a hero, it's a negotiation, a cosmic accounting where suffering must be balanced against suffering, where freedom always costs something, even if it's someone else who pays.
After his release, Prometheus returns to Olympus, but he's changed. He wears a ring forged from his chains and a crown of willow branches, symbols of his bondage, reminders that his freedom came at a cost. He's reconciled with Zeus, but the myths are vague about what that reconciliation looks like. Did Prometheus apologize? Did Zeus? Or did they simply acknowledge that they're both trapped in roles they can't escape, the eternal rebel and the eternal authority, forever locked in a dance of conflict and resolution? This ambiguity is intentional because the story of Prometheus isn't a simple fable with a clear moral. It's a meditation on the price of progress, the burden of knowledge, the responsibility that comes with power, and the question of whether defiance or submission is the nobler path. The ancient Greeks loved ambiguity in their myths because life is ambiguous. The right choice isn't always clear. Sometimes there is no right choice, only different kinds of suffering, different kinds of courage. In the centuries since the myth was first told, Prometheus has become a symbol of human ambition, scientific progress, and revolutionary spirit. Mary Shelley subtitled her novel Frankenstein, The Modern Prometheus, recognizing that Victor Frankenstein's creation of life was an echo of Prometheus's theft of fire, a moment when humanity reached for divine power and had to live with the consequences. The Romantics saw Prometheus as the ultimate rebel, the one who defied tyranny even at unimaginable cost. Karl Marx saw him as a symbol of the proletariat struggling against oppression. Anarchists and revolutionaries of every stripe have claimed him as their patron saint. But here's what's fascinating. Zeus and the Olympians also have their defenders. Yes, Prometheus gave humanity fire, but did he have the right to make that choice without considering the consequences? Parents don't give children matches because children aren't ready for that responsibility. Is humanity ready for the power Prometheus gave us? The evidence is mixed at best. We've created wonders, yes, but we've also created horrors. We've saved billions of lives with medicine and agriculture, but we've also built weapons that could end all life. We've connected the entire world through technology, but we've also created systems of surveillance and manipulation that threaten human autonomy itself. Maybe Zeus was right to be afraid of what would happen if mortals had godlike power. Maybe Prometheus's gift was less an act of love and more an act of hubris. A titan who couldn't accept his defeat deciding to plant the seeds of chaos in the new divine order. The myth doesn't give us easy answers because the questions it asks don't have easy answers. What do we owe to those who gave us power? What responsibility comes with knowledge? When is disobedience justified, and when is it just destruction wearing a noble mask? These aren't abstract philosophical questions, they're the questions we face every single day in the 21st century. Every time we debate whether to develop a new technology, every time we weigh innovation against safety, every time we choose between progress and precaution, we're reenacting the conflict between Prometheus and Zeus. And here's the most haunting part. Prometheus had foresight, but he couldn't see everything. He saw that humans would suffer if he gave them fire, and he gave it to them anyway, because he believed that a hard life with knowledge was better than an easy life in ignorance. But could he see all the consequences? Could he see the atomic bomb? Could he see climate change? Could he see artificial intelligence? Or did he simply make a choice and hope that humanity would be wise enough to handle what he'd given them? We are Prometheus's children, and we've inherited both his gifts and his curses. We have the fire, we have the knowledge, we have power that the ancient Greeks couldn't have imagined, but we're also chained to our own rock in a way, trapped by the consequences of our own innovations, watching the eagle of unintended consequences tear us apart every day while we try to figure out how to be responsible with the power we've been given. The story teaches us that there's nobility in suffering for your principles, but it also warns us that noble intentions don't protect us from terrible outcomes. Prometheus was heroic, but his heroism came with a body count. Humanity got fire, but we also got Pandora's jar and all the evils it contained. Progress is never clean. Evolution is never painless. Every gift comes with a price, and sometimes that price is paid by people who never asked for the gift in the first place. So what do we do with this myth?
How do we live in the world that Prometheus created? The answer, I think, is that we do exactly what Prometheus did. We look at the future, we see the consequences, and we make our choice anyway. But we make it with our eyes open, with full knowledge that our actions will have repercussions we can't control, that our gifts might become curses, that our fire might burn down the world. The key is to remember what Prometheus never forgot, even during 30,000 years of torture. Humanity is worth the risk. We're flawed, yes, we're destructive and selfish and short-sighted, but we're also capable of incredible beauty, profound compassion, and genuine wisdom. We create art that moves the soul and science that unlocks the secrets of the universe. We love each other fiercely, we dream impossible dreams, and we keep trying to be better than we were yesterday. That's what Prometheus saw when he looked at those weak, naked creatures standing in the cold. He didn't see what we were, he saw what we could become, and he decided that potential was worth fighting for, worth suffering for, worth defying the gods for. He gave us fire not because we deserved it, but because he believed we could learn to use it wisely, even if that learning came through terrible mistakes and painful lessons. And maybe that's the real gift Prometheus gave us, not fire itself, but the belief that we're capable of growth, that we're not locked into a fixed nature, that we can transform ourselves through knowledge and effort and will. He gave us the burden of choice and the freedom that comes with it. He made us responsible for our own fate instead of leaving us as pawns of the gods. He made us human in the fullest sense of the word, conscious, creative, and capable of tremendous good and terrible evil. As you move forward from here, remember the Titan chained to the rock. Remember that every convenience you enjoy, every comfort, every piece of knowledge was bought with someone's suffering. Remember that the fire can warm you or burn you, and which it does depends entirely on how you use it. Remember that progress requires sacrifice, but also that not every sacrifice leads to progress. Remember that some knowledge can't be unlearned, some fires can't be unlit, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you were wrong. But most importantly, remember that Prometheus never regretted his choice. Even after 30,000 years of torture, he looked at humanity and thought it was worth it. So the question isn't whether we deserved the fire he gave us. The question is whether we're going to prove him right, whether we're going to use our knowledge and power to build something beautiful, or whether we're going to burn it all down. That's the weight we carry, the burden of Prometheus's gift. And unlike him, we can't see the future. We don't know how this story ends. We only know that we're writing it together, one choice at a time, one innovation at a time, one act of courage or cowardice at a time. The fire is in our hands now. What we do with it is up to us. That's the real meaning of Prometheus's sacrifice. He gave us the power to shape our own destiny, for better or worse, and now we have to live with that terrible, wonderful freedom. The eagle is still flying somewhere, I think. Not literally, not chained to a physical rock tearing at a physical liver, but metaphorically, circling above every choice we make, every boundary we push, every time we reach for power we might not be ready to wield. And the question the myth asks us is simple but profound. When that eagle comes for you, when you have to pay the price for your ambition, for your defiance, for your refusal to accept limitations, will you face it with Prometheus's courage? Will you say it was worth it? Will you look at what you've created and decide that the cost, however terrible, was worth the beauty and possibility and hope you brought into the world? That's the test. That's the real fire. Not the flame itself, but the question of what you're willing to burn for, what you're willing to suffer for, what you believe in strongly enough to defy the gods themselves. Prometheus answered that question 30,000 years ago. Now it's your turn.